Balewa, the Premier of the defunct Northern Region, that's Alhaji Ahmadu Bello, and others, including the Finance Minister, Chief Festus Okotiebo, Chief Samuel Akintola, the then Premier of the Old Western Region. Of course, Chief Okotiebo was the first Finance Minister of the Federation.
Well, indeed, Kingsley, the coup actors led by Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzogu, who called themselves revolutionaries, described it as a temporary upheaval to end corruption and ethnic rivalry.
But just like a handshake that extends beyond the elbow, the perceived motive snowballed into another insurrection, triggering a counter-coup that plunged Nigeria ultimately into its civil war in a period lasting 3 years from 1967 to 1970.
Well, Kingsley, as you know, that chapter of terror opened up a 30-month unrest that saw killings in unprecedented magnitude, resulting in sectional venom and bitterness that have refused to go like a plague. In fact, General Gowon's famous description of the war as one with no victor, no vanquished was an important rhetorical effort to heal the wounds.
No question about that, Kirian. Instructively, it was also on the 15th of January, this time around in 1970, that the civil war formally ended, with Biafra surrendering to the military government led by General Yakubu Gowon.
And for 29 years, the military held sway until in 1999, when power returned to a democratically elected government. However, the events of January 15, 1966 remained significant but traumatic, with undeniable effects evident in persistent ethnic animosities and distrust, which continues to shape Nigeria's identity and future.
That's right, Kirian, and just to indicate that after the military coup of 1966 and the counter coup, of course, of July the 29th, 1966, the military stayed in office for a period of 13 years until 79, when we had the Second Republic that ultimately also collapsed on the 31st of December 1983. Now, the Nigerian government sets aside January 15th every year as a day to remember the nation's fallen heroes and those who paid the supreme price while serving the country. And that's followed, of course, the adoption of the Armed Forces Remembrance Day.
It's been 56 years since the travails and triumphs of that fateful day. Nigeria as a nation still feels the weight and scar of that singular action, and observers have gone ahead to recommend that history and lessons of January 15, 1966 should be carefully harnessed and taught in schools in a manner that will commit our future generations to the actualization of the Nigeria of our dreams.
But importantly, in the minds of many is how we purge ourselves of the bitterness and address the grievances arising from that unfortunate incident of January 15, 1966. What are the lessons learned, knowing full well that a nation must never forget her history in order to build a threshold of legacies that would engineer development and peace? Once again, what are the lessons arising from January 15, 1966? The questions and more, of course, we will have our guests discussing with us today in our conversation segment of January 15th in Nigeria's history. It's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on a network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kirian Umayo, also welcoming you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And we shall, as always, serve you our complimentary segments in the course of the package. For now, here is Dennis Adegunloye with the morning news. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Karen. Good morning, and good morning in Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. Multiple visionary and trail-blazing projects executed under the Isheya development pillars of the Dapo Abiodun administration in Ogun State have been inaugurated. President Muhammadu Buhari, who performed the ceremony, described as impressive the quality and standards of the projects, as well as the innovative ways resources were deployed in their execution.
Not just projects, they are also part of our agenda for development and have been deliberately conceived and implemented to also achieve employment generation, poverty alleviation.
I am proud of what you have done for your state and your people. You have made our great party, the APC, proud of too.
And 3 critical road infrastructure projects in Ogun State, the Lagos-Ota Abeokuta, Sango-Ota Idiroko and Shagamu-Ugijo roads are to be reconstructed by the federal government under the tax credit scheme. President Muhammadu Buhari gave the assurance while addressing the people of Ogun State during his one-day official visit to the state.
I congratulate the people of Ogun State for having such a focused, deliberate, and inclusive administration under the watch of His Excellency Prince Dabo Abiodun. I enjoin you to continue to support him for the successful implementation of the Building Our Future Together.
All these have led to an increased IGR in the year 2021, a COVID year, of about 100 billion naira.
200 Buffalo trucks have joined the fleet of the Nigeria Police Force, and new security gadgets purchased to enhance the performance of personnel in crime fighting. The equipment, procured by the Nigeria Police Trust Fund, was presented to the IGP by President Muhammadu Buhari in Abuja.
The administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is adequately poised to give all that is necessary to the Nigerian Police Trust Fund with a view to enable it to meet its mandate and attain the expectations of Nigeria Police Force and Nigerians in general.
I call on all Nigerians, corporate bodies, multinational organizations to key into the goals of the Trust Fund to enable it accomplish its mission.
Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, has inaugurated a 23-man governing board of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, with a charge to members to eschew corruption totally, as governments will not hesitate to sanction all infractions in the fight against corruption.
Evolve ways and means of dealing with the sophistry that criminals have imbibed. It has created a doubt as to the sincerity of people doing business with us.
We had 98.54% success rate in court. But with the inauguration of this board, I believe, and the wealth of experience that all of us are bringing to the board, we'll be able to do better.
A highly capable and professional bureaucracy is second to none in the development of any country. This was the submission of Vice President Yemi Osinbajo when he delivered a special lecture on strategic leadership, the essential skills, organized by the Office of the Head of the Civil Service of the Federation.
So the strategic leader must acknowledge the stark reality that without the private sector, we do not have an economic plan. This must then inform the way the strategic leader thinks, plans, and acts. The leader must recognize that the whole point of the civil service and government agencies must therefore be to facilitate and enable individuals, corporations, and other commercial entities.
All bilateral cooperations between Nigeria and Namibia, as contained on the platform of the first joint commission held in 1992, are to be activated in the interest of both countries. This was the tone of discussions between Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed and the Namibian High Commissioner to Nigeria in Abuja.
We have always believed that until every country is independent and liberated in Africa, no country will be safe from colonization. And that informed why Nigeria plays such a role. Because Nigeria also set up the Technical Aid Corps, which regularly sends young professionals to many countries in Africa.
The National Primary Healthcare Development Agency and partners have dismissed reports claiming that there is an outbreak of a new polio virus in some states. The agency emphasizes that there is no case of wild polio virus anywhere in the country since the last case in 2016. In a statement, the agency says only 395 cases of circulating mutant poliovirus type 2 caused by immunity gaps in children, poor sanitation, open defecation and inadequate access to clean drinking water are currently recorded across 27 states and the FCT. The statement adds that Nigeria, in collaboration with donors and development partners, has acquired new tools and resources to ensure that outbreaks are contained through various robust responses using the novel oral polio vaccine NOPV2. The National Primary Healthcare Development Agency assures Nigerians that the agency and partners will continue to conduct surveillance and vaccination campaigns to prevent and contain any possible importation of the wild poliovirus into the country. Well, that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues shortly after this break with Kieran and Kingsley. Good morning.
Digital Switch Over project, which is commonly referred to as DSO, which entails television channels switching from analog to digital broadcasting. It's one of the biggest projects embarked upon by this administration. Branded as Free TV, offers its viewers about 60 digital channels, including sports, music, movies, and news. The federal government has licensed about 23 set-top box manufacturers. 7 of them have self-production, employing several thousands of people. We've made it now compulsory for all stations in Nigeria to only broadcast productions made in Nigeria for products which are produced in Nigeria.
Everybody knows the secret to good cooking is that special ingredient. The mothers know it. But does this new generation know it? Let's find out. Mothers, daughters, are you ready? Yes! Let the cooking begin.
Erisco tomato paste. Now we get home, now we get love, now we get children. We spice the world with a meal so great and so healthy. You know we've got your back. Oh, with Erisco, Regico, Nagico.
Ladies and gentlemen, food is ready.
Food of love. Good food for the body. Yum, yum for the body.
Erisco, Regico and Nagico tomato paste is made by Erisco Foods Limited, feeding Africans with healthy foods.
The 2022 Armed Forces Remembrance Day celebration is here again. The Nigeria Armed Forces work tirelessly day and night to give us peace to go about our businesses. Some have paid the supreme price. Should we forget the families and loved ones they left behind? No.
I am therefore privileged to honor these veterans who devoted most of their lives, active lives, to securing the nation and the world at large.
So, let's support the Nigerian Armed Forces and their families, corporate organizations, government agencies, parastatals, and individuals. Let's show our love and support for our armed forces. They are our heroes. Buy the Armed Forces Remembrance Emblem and donate into the Armed Forces Remembrance Emblem Appeal account. We love you, and your labor and sacrifice will not be in vain for spilling your blood for us to live.
The 157-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
This is a station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and
I can say that I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportations. Kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
From the heart of the Federal Capital Territory
to the ancient city of Kano,
from the sprawling rooftops of Ibadan
to the bustling markets of Aba and the creeks of the Niger Delta, you really can't beat the reach.
Over the years, we have kept going, keeping you informed, educated, and entertained.
And how have we survived in the very challenging year?
Because of our pillars of support, namely the 3 tiers of government: ministries, departments and agencies,
corporate bodies and advertisers,
religious bodies,
civil society groups,
political parties, and most importantly, you, our esteemed viewers. Together, we made 2021 great.
And together, we shall make 2022 greater. Thank you.
From all of us here at NTA, your season's greetings and a prosperous new year.
The program is Good Morning Nigeria. Now let's talk business. The Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria has called on the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, to remove restrictive controls that make it difficult for Bureau de Change operators to compete for the $20 billion inflow in the unofficial forex market. Let's now join Aleka Obanache Arwa for details.
This is coming as it laments the rising import bill of the country, urging the federal government to deploy measures to tackle the challenge, given its grave implication for the Naira exchange rates. The association stated this in its quarterly economic review report for the fourth quarter of 2021, noting that the stoppage of dollar sales to Bureau de Change by the Central Bank of Nigeria has triggered a period of reformation and realization of potentials. These potentials, Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria noted, included the estimated $20 billion annual inflow in the unofficial forex market, which far exceeded the annual dollar cash sales to Bureau de Change by Central Bank of Nigeria. Meanwhile, daily reserve movement reveals that Nigeria's external reserve has reached $40.5 billion, but however, marginally declined by $11 million when compared to its closing balance as at the last day in 2021, which was pegged at $40.52 billion. The reserve had gained $5.99 billion in October, following a $2.76 million gain in September 2021 as a result of the $4 billion Euro bond secured by the federal government and the $3.4 billion International Monetary Fund IMF Special Drawing Rights Facility. However, in November, it started decline as a result of heightened demand for school fees, travel, and other import needs, but soon regained an upward trajectory the first week in January 2022. Analysts say foreign inflows are paramount for sustained foreign exchange liquidity over the medium terms, in line with expectation that accretion to the reserve will be weak given that crude oil production levels remain quite low. With business news, Alika Oponachi Arwa.
Thank you very much, Alika, for the business package and Good Morning Nigeria. Coming up next is News Super Review.
Let's welcome Bayo Toyebi, our newspaper reviewer. Bayo, good morning. and we're glad to have you here again.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning, Kirian. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right. Now, let's start off with the Daily Sun newspaper. The Daily Sun newspaper. Federal government talks tough on corruption, vows no infraction will go unpunished, inaugurates EFCC board. Absence of board not hampering our productivity, according to the chairman of EFCC, Bauer. Page 6 is where you get details of that story. 2023, why I am yet to join presidential race. That's Carlo Umadi declares on Abuja platform. Pages 3, 8, and 18. Buhari pays condolence visit to Shenekon's family, inaugurates projects in Ogun State. Pages 7 and 27 of the Sun newspaper. Ex-AGF writes Malami, SGF, DSS, others demands non-interference in ex-NIA DG's court proceedings. Twitter, US, EU, UK hail return to Nigeria. We are committed to the country, according to blogging site. That's on page 4. Now to Leadership newspaper. Leadership newspaper. Convention delay, presidential declarations deepen APC crisis. That's on page 4. PGF DG accuses Bumi committee of holding members captive. Our presidential aspirants are selfish stakeholders. All that on page 4. Now, Igbo presidency won't divide Nigeria, according to Omahe. Technology, not foot soldiers, needed to defeat terrorists. That's from veterans. No outbreak of new polio virus, according to federal government. That's on page 6. Ezekwesili heads Soludo's 80-man transition committee. That's on page 15 of Leadership newspaper. Federal government inaugurates the FCC board 6 years after. Now, score scaled in Bauchi Kwara road crashes. That's on page 8 of the Leadership newspaper.
All right, thanks, Kirian. We also take a look at the window page of The Nation, and above the name flag you have the following headlines. Members will pick PDP candidates, says Ayu, and with the rider Dele Momodu to run. That's on page 3. Buhari tasks stakeholders on plateau violence. Twitter restoration, good for businesses. Government plans $500 million investment in technology for youth. Now, below the nameplate, ICPC secures forfeiture of 110.4 million naira traced to teacher. And Buhari at Shonekon's home. You have details of that on page 3. Now, NLNG to boost domestic market gas supply. And Buhari opens strategic projects in Ogun. Well, we have Printer's Devil there saying Buhari opens strategic projects in Ogun. Details of that story you find from the front page with a jump to page 4. This story has a kicker and a double-decker headline, 2023 President. APC and PDP weigh options on zoning. Parties reject claims by aspirants and supporters. Now, according to the APC, the caretaker committee has not discussed or reached a zoning decision. People are just flying what will favor their interest. For the PDP, says, as I speak with you, the PDP has not zoned its 2023 presidential ticket. We are going to make wide consultations with all stakeholders. And also at the foot of the front page, the story that Kirian also read earlier, Soludo picks Ezekwesili, Chidoka, Utomi, and others for transition committee. Details on page 28. Mayo.
Thank you, Kisley. Let's start with President Muhammadu Buhari's visit yesterday to Ogun State, where he inaugurated 5 projects described as landmark by the Governor Dapo Abiola administration. The projects include 42-kilometer Shagamu interchange, the Abeokuta dual carriageway, now renamed Muhammadu Buhari Expressway, as well as 14-kilometer Ijebu-Ode Expressway. The president acceded to the request of the Ogun State government, assuring that federal roads in Ogun State will begin to receive federal attention. The president who appeared satisfied, described his host as a performing governor of Nigeria Gateway State and a worthy example of promises made and promises kept. Meanwhile, the president also visited the Ikoyi home of late Ernest Shoneka to condole the widow and the family of the head of defunct interim national government. President, who encouraged the widow, also wrote in the condolence register, his love and commitment to the peace and unity of the country are worthy of emulation. May his soul rest in peace. Governor Dapo Abiodun, who accompanied the president, said despite the very busy day, the president was determined to visit the Shoneka family. He was accompanied also by the Lagos State Governor and the Governor of Yobe State. The National Primary Healthcare Development Agency says there is no outbreak of new wild polio virus in Nigeria. The Executive Director, Dr. Faisal Shaibu, says that there is no reported case of wild polio since 2016 in Nigeria. He clarified that there are presently 395 cases of mutant polio type 2 across 27 states and the Federal Capital Territory. And he says Nigeria and Africa are certified free from wild polio since 2020. Meanwhile, the mutant polio type 2 he says was caused by immunity gaps, and the agency is determined to follow up with a robust outbreak response to take care of that. Policing in the country also yesterday received a boost when 7.5 billion worth of vehicles, protective equipment, and medical equipment were presented to the Nigerian police force. The 200 Buffalo trucks, bulletproof vests, as well as protective helmets, including medical equipment, were acquired through the Nigerian Police Trust Fund. The Minister of Police Affairs, Muhammadu Dinjadi, presented them to the Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba, on behalf of President Muhammadu Buhari. Meanwhile, the police in the Federal Capital Territory has arrested one Patrick Ode for forcefully entering the apartment of a lady at Orozo and raping her at gunpoint. The man was said to have forcefully taken the lady away to his apartment to continue the crime. He threatened to kill the lady if he ever told anybody, but the courageous lady took courage and reported to the police. The police swooped on his residence when they found him sleeping. They searched through his house. They found he has hidden a pistol loaded with live ammunition in a cooking pot in his kitchen. The police is believed to be, says that he's been told to be a leader of a cult group that has been tormenting terrorists in the community in Orozo area for about 3 years. There is a similar guy described as Mosquito who's been terrorizing people in the Lugbe axis in the Federal Capital Territory too. Going to football now, host Cameroon registered 4-0 defeat of Ethiopia to consolidate their qualification to come among the 16 that will eventually qualify to continue from the quarterfinals. Cameroon captain Vincent Abubakar has now registered 4 goals. He is now the lead goal scorer on the chart. But West African teams have been registering wins. Nigeria beat Egypt. Senegal defeated Zimbabwe. Guinea beat Malawi. Sierra Leone held Algeria to a draw, while only Morocco succeeded in beating Ghana. All the matches ended 1-0. Tunisia also lost 1-0 to Mali in a match that the referee took inexplicable decisions. Twice he ended the match before regulation time, in the 85th minute and the 89th minute. But the Confederation of African Football has upheld Mali's 1-0 victory in spite of Tunisia's protestations. Meanwhile, the Super Eagles camp was rejuvenated with Omero, who was injured during the match with the Pharaohs of Egypt, returning to training. Super Eagles will take on Sudan on Saturday, where Egypt is to play Guinea-Bissau.
There are 2 issues that I would like us to touch on.
Yes.
Very briefly. The Buffalo trucks that were delivered to the Nigeria police, where are the trucks made? I've not heard that in the story.
Yes, there's no information about that.
And so that would also lead us to the question, if the trucks are made in Nigeria, fantastic. That would be further validation of buy made in Nigeria.
Yes, patronizing made in Nigeria goods.
Buy made in Nigeria. But if the trucks were not made in Nigeria, then questions have to persist as to why we could not find local manufacturers for those trucks. There's a company in Ogun State that manufactures armored vehicles in Ogun State, and of course, Innoson is very well known. There are other manufacturers, whether assembly or otherwise. I just thought at that point,
yes, that will encourage our own domestic industries.
Precisely. Create jobs, that's what it does. And then, of course, the companies are enabled, to expand their businesses.
And of course, employ more Nigerians. That's the point. Well, we don't know where it's made, but all the same, you have made a very good observation there. Because if those trucks were purchased, outside Nigeria, for me, that's a minus.
Another thing should be maintenance of those vehicles. Usually, when you see police vehicles around, you'll be very worried about those vehicles. But there has been improvement of recent. There was a last set that were donated by Dangote. Those sets of cars are still looking at least presentable. But the level of maintenance has to improve. Because if you have facilities, vehicular facilities, and they are not properly maintained, they will soon go out of use.
That's right. Now, towards the end of last year, we discussed matters around the efficiency of the police on account of the new boost that they got in terms of their allowances and all that. And where you are seated now is where retired AIG Felix Obaudu sat. Felix Obaudu is a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. And he made a point that mechanical workshops in the various police commands are not functioning. And if they are functioning, probably just a few of them are functioning. So the first responsibility, if they haven't taken care of that, is for the Police Trust Fund, since they are the suppliers of these vehicles, to be sure that those critical elements of maintenance are available. And then you hire the right persons. If you say you are recruiting 100,000 policemen, how many skilled hands amongst them are you hiring? It's not everybody that needs to be carrying a gun all over the place.
Yes. And the Buffalo vehicles that have been supplied, I think ideally when you have such contractual agreements, there must be backup spare parts for a period of the contract agreement.
That's right.
That will go a long way in sustaining.
We don't know the details of the contract, but the right point made is that the police authorities should have a department dedicated to maintenance of whatever equipment or vehicle that they use. That is what is obtainable elsewhere globally.
That's right. The last issue, of course, has to do with the transition committee set up by the governor-elect of Anambra. 80-man transition committee headed by Ezekwesili. I mean, when I read the story yesterday, I was wondering. I mean, so assuming it were a president-elect, you're going to have 2,000 persons. The simple question is, what are you doing with an 80-person transition committee? I think it's unwieldy in the first instance. There are all kinds of ideas. You could have requested for memoranda, pieces of advice or aid memoir from some of these persons whom you have put on the transition committee. But more critically in our politics, when you take a look at the membership of this transition committee, how many of the, if I may use the expression loosely, the real owners of the politics of Anambra are on the transition committee, those who made your election possible. So the transition committee can design the program and plans for you, and so on and so forth. So when you get into office, that's when the real owners who enabled your election, Mr. Governor, this is what we want to.
Well, but I think he may have expanded. He may have expanded the transition, not just handover from Obiano to him. And maybe he made provision for ministries, parastatals, and all of that. Persons that could assist in transition for those departments, right? For him to perhaps appreciate and understand those establishments before he starts running the government. It may not necessarily be transition in terms of handover alone. It could have expanded to other aspects of governance.
That's why you have handover notes.
Okay. Did you see the local government chairman that appointed about 18 special assistance.
All right, Bayo. All right, time is not on our side at this point, so thank you again for being here this morning.
Thank you.
We hope to see you again on Monday when we reassemble for another edition of Good Morning Nigeria. For now, let's take a short break. We'll be back with the main conversation point we have for today.
The Nigerian aviation sector is rapidly growing with the construction of new international airport terminals in several regions of the country. The new Murtala Mohammed International Airport has an estimated passenger increase of 30 million annually and 15 million for Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. Malam Aminu Kano International Airport is also expected to open new frontiers for the region with more travel capacity for the annual Hajj, while the new Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, avails more business opportunities connecting the industrial cities in the region to the world. These new terminals beat world-class standards with enabling infrastructure that aid air travel, tourism, and the eventual growth of the country's GDP.
Open up commerce and, of course, link us to international societies.
People from international community will come here to do business, and then that will bring in more revenue to the state.
Now, distances can be seamlessly covered as Nigeria keeps raising its bar to suit global infrastructure standards.
The center is purposely established in order to provide these services that are examinations, medical examinations and investigations that were not provided for in Kano as well as the entire Northwest region. It's equipped with modern technological equipment in terms of radiological services. We have MRI 1.5 Tesla. We have digital X-ray as well as 4D ultrasound equipment. The importance of the center cannot be overemphasized. Just within 1 year, the center attended to thousands and numerous patients as well as medical examinations. NKDC is established in order also to provide these healthcare facilities as a discounted price.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Arise, O Nigerians! Let's applaud the courage of Flight Lieutenant Abayomi Dairo, aka the Aggressor, for his skillful and dogged escape from the bloodthirsty bandits in the forest of Zamfara State. 3 hearty cheers also to all military and security personnel who are tirelessly protecting fellow Nigerians from insurgency and banditry while maintaining peace and order. Nigerians are proud of Abayomi Dairo and all our gallant men and women in uniform for sacrificing so much to keep us safe. We admire your courage and we say thank you. God bless the armed forces. God bless Nigeria. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. And as a prompt for our conversation on January 15 in Nigeria's history, let's take this background report put together by Ekene Ntalive.
January 15 is a date that is pregnant with meaning in the history of Nigeria. A date that inadvertently changed the political landscape of the country. It was on this date in 1966 that Nigeria woke up to the reality of a coup d'etat that claimed the lives of the then Prime Minister Abubakar Tafawa Balewa alongside other senior politicians. Although the coup conspirators led by Chukwuma Kaduna Nzogu were arrested, this marked the beginning of military incursion in Nigerian politics, with General Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi taking charge as the first military head of state. 6 months later, a counter-coup masterminded by Lieutenant Colonel Murtala Mohammed, was carried out, claiming the life of the first military head of state, General Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi, and his host, Lieutenant Colonel Adekunle Fajuyi. Upon the termination of Ironsi's government, Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon was appointed head of state by the July 1966 coup plotters. The coup and counter-coup of 1966 snowballed into a lot of events that led to the 30 months Nigerian Civil War. Between January 15, 1966 and May 29, 1999, the army held power in Nigeria without interruption, apart from a short-lived return to democracy between 1979 to 1983. Although civilian rule finally returned in 1999 and has continued unabated for 23 years now, the events of January 15, 1966 and the civil war that ensued from that have continued to haunt the country. The deep division along ethnic sentiments today is seen as a remote product of the coup and counter-coup of 1966, while the 27 years of military rule has been described by many as a major setback to Nigeria's journey towards growth and development. Coincidentally, the 30-month civil war that was fought between the federal and Biafran troops between 1967 to 1970 ended on the 15th of January, giving the day another significance in Nigeria's calendar. To honor the veterans of that war and those that paid the supreme sacrifice, the Commonwealth of Nations adopted 15th January as Armed Forces Remembrance Day in commemoration of the conclusion of the Nigerian Civil War that sought to tear apart the unity of Nigeria. On this episode of Good Morning Nigeria, guests will be speaking on issues around January 15 and how it has shaped Nigeria's history.
Many thanks, Ekene Nduloye, for that elaborate background report and conversation this morning. We have guests with us here in the studios and another guest joining us via Zoom. First, let's welcome the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina. Femi, delighted to have you this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Also here with us in the studios is the Managing Director of the Nigerian Film Corporation, Dr. Chidia Madwekwe. Dr. Madwekwe, we are glad to have you with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Kiran?
And also part of the panel this morning is Dr. Menasara Kogo Omar, International Analyst on Democracy and Nation Building. Welcome to the program.
It's always my pleasure to be here to contribute to develop the nation.
And we have via Zoom from Kaduna, Professor Kabir Mato, a political scientist. We are glad to have you, sir. Join us again on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, Kiran. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, thank you, Professor Kabir Mato. We might as well begin with you, since you are with us via Zoom. When Nigeria gained independence on the 1st of October 1960 and became a republic exactly 3 years later, the country had out a lot of hope and promise, not just for its citizens, but also for the rest of the black world. But some argue that the events of January 15th, 1966 altered the nation's destiny, which we're still grappling with over half a century later. Professor Kabir Mato, what is your take on this perspective?
Thank you very much. That's their view. I don't see it as such. But what is very important is that January 15th, 1966 fundamentally marks the beginning of military incursion into the body politics of this country. We recall that at that material time, it was the fashion throughout, emerging nations in Africa. Coup took place in the Congo, it took place in Ghana, and a few more other places. So it became a fashion more or less by young military officers, hungry for political power to move in and topple elected civilian administration. Fundamentally, the 1966 coup in January, in my view, as many other people would agree, was unnecessary. Apart from the fact that it was unnecessary, it marked a very dark beginning, I will say also, as far as the political history, as well as the sociology of the entire Nigerian nation is concerned. This is perhaps as a result of the manner in which the rest of the nation viewed all the sectional nature in which the principal actors in that particular military purge, reflected. It wasn't a national military affair. It was more or less a conspiracy of very few young military officers, primarily of southeastern Nigerian extraction, that participated in the purge. So whatever their sincerity or purpose might be, or whatever any analyst later they will try to portray it, the fact that it didn't reflect, the character of coups that we see happen subsequently in Nigeria and in other parts of Africa, actually gave it that ethnic coloration, which, in my view, is partly responsible for this deep-heated, national tension that we face in form of regionalism, cutthroat competition for access to not just power, but even economic power, material resources, and so on and so forth. It gave birth to the idea that whenever Nigerian elites are competing for any space, be it economic or social, the first, primary matter that comes in is the issue of where he or she is coming from. This is not also disregarding the fact that the issue of regionalism and ethnicity could be said to have, being in this country even during colonial rule, soon after the amalgamation, leading to that. But primarily, I think the seed of political instability in this country and aggressive ethnicity was, prompted by the January 15th, 1966 coup.
Professor Kabiru, it is indeed an aberration, for the irresponsible for a group of officers to take over leadership of any country, not just Nigeria. But then the grievances of the coup leaders at that time was alleged corruption among public officials. And till today, corruption has become endemic in our system. Now, what does this say about Nigeria and Nigerians, especially those who are in the political arena?
Well, Kiran, corruption has become a lazy lexicon that every Nigerian military official that desires to, intervene in the affairs of governance will bring up. Military men said corruption, cited corruption as the reason for taking over, even during when a military government was in power. So, and if we take a historical view of the allegations of corruption as profiled by Nzegu Kaduna and his team in 1966 January, we will find that it was more or less, a kite that was simply flown all over the place in order to secure legitimacy. The level of corruption that was said to have taken place between 1960 and 1966, in my view, was a child's play and wasn't significant enough to have caused, the destruction of the political system that took place. But it is always obvious that whenever soldiers desire to take over power from either civilians or to wrestle power from themselves, the major issue that will attract national attention and even international sympathy has always been the issue of corruption. So corruption wasn't really it. And, like Professor Sam Aluko would say, you don't completely isolate corruption from the general political economy of every human society. The tragedy is when corruption becomes so endemic and unfriendly, and therefore impacts negatively on the ways of lives of the citizens of any particular nation. So to have cited corruption as a reason for the January 15th, 1966, in my view, was merely a kind of, propaganda tool or an alibi that the coup plotters, deployed in order to win the national, sentiment and sympathy, which substantially, did not actually get, the desired, objective that it was intended to achieve. Yes, we've been battling with corruption. We're still battling with corruption in Nigeria, but since when? The gargantuan nature of corruption that taking place, especially at the beginning of the civil administration in 1999, would have also provided for that. But we know clearly that it's out of fashion. The globe does not accept it, and Nigeria being a leader in Africa and the black race, the black world generally, cannot afford to play the part of Guinea, or play the part of Mali, or so corruption, like I said, has always been an alibi that coupists have presented forward in order to try to win local, national, and international sentiments whenever they try to satisfy their selfish desires of taking over power from either legitimately elected government or wrestling power from their colleagues in the military.
All right, Professor Kabir Matul, thank you very much. We'll return to you later on in the course of the conversation. Now, gentlemen, back to the studios here in Abuja. Now, the other alibi that the five majors advanced for seizing power or staging the coup on the 15th of January 1966 had to do with political violence in the country, arising first from the regional elections and then later on the federal elections. But we are now using the benefit of hindsight to evaluate the events of that season. Femi Adesina, was June 15, 1966 a mistake?
That's a big one. If it was a mistake, it's already part of our national experience. And if it truly was a mistake, we should learn from it, or we should have learned from it. But I would like to add something to what Professor Kabir Matul said, that coup emphasized ethnic division in Nigeria. Like I have said at some fora, when people talk of a divided nation, I tell them Nigeria had always been divided. Always. Right from 1914, when we were forcefully cobbled together as a country, we had always been divided. The fissures may be more emphasized at particular times, more than at other times, but this country had always been divided. And the nature of the killings that happened in the 1966 coup, both the one in January and the reprisal one, even further emphasized the division in the country. So, in the light of all that, yes, we can say it was a mistake. The reasons adduced, corruption, later violence after the elections, everything would, with the benefit of hindsight now, amount to a mistake. Because if the country and its politicians had been allowed to make their mistakes and learn from it, then we would not have gone the route we went, where we had military rule for more than about 3 decades. Now, I need to emphasize, military rule in itself was not entirely a disadvantage, because we saw some development under the military that we didn't even see in subsequent civilian administrations. We have very, very germane developmental issues in this country done by the military. So we couldn't say that it was all entirely zero. But then I believe that if the civilian leadership had been left to make its mistakes and learn from it and correct it, Nigeria would have been better off than what eventually happened to this country.
All right, let's bring in Dr. Mena Sarakogo Omar here. Of course, you've listened to the two speakers.
Yes.
Point to the fact that the coup of 1966 was actually unnecessary, right? And of course, what actually followed in terms of the counter coup and then civil war and then other military interregnums along the line of our development trajectory as a nation. What's your take?
Yes, first of all, what we are talking about, January 15th, let me remind us that it is a kola nut of 3 parts. January 15th, the originality of it was the First World War. After the First World War, precisely on the 11th of November 1919, the Allied forces met together with Germany at Versailles in France and signed an armistice. In other words, declaration that there was no winner of the World War in the interest of embracing peace collectively. And then it was agreed that that particular date should be celebrated as a World Peace Day in commemoration of the gallant soldiers that fought. And you remember Nigerian soldiers were repatriated and joined along with the Commonwealth forces who fought the Nazi forces against Adolf Hitler. The same thing with the Second World War. We kept celebrating. And then some events that happened immediately before the independence should be taken into cognizance before arriving at 15th of January. 1903, we had elections, but the most fundamental was the 1957 House of Representatives election, where the election turned out to be a reflection of Nigeria's context. The North had seats of representation. The Southwest was the most educated, and the entrepreneurial and the one that got most exposed diplomatically and business-wise globally, the Southeast. So because of the population advantage, the North got majority of the seats. And then it appears that it will be difficult for only one section to produce leadership for the nation. Hence, the, what do you call it? The join of forces by NC and NPC. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe and Ahmadu Bello's party. And then in 1959, at the parliamentary election, they got majority and hence set to form the government. Now, prior to that time, Queen Elizabeth visited Nigeria. Blueprints were set by these regional blocks on how to advance themselves. It was projected by 1980, each of these blocks working assiduously will collectively make Nigeria a superpower. Now, based on the ingredients of agricultural production, commerce, and international trade, nobody envisaged that we would be able to get petroleum or any other thing. In 1959, we discovered petroleum. That changed the dynamics of that particular blueprint, because the blueprint was not based on the expectation of any money from petroleum. And immediately we gained that one. Election had been conducted. The NC and NPC alliance produced the government. Then rivalry began to come in. Majority of those politicians from the area non-producing the oil. And then another mistake came when we became Republican in 1963. The 1963 Constitution resides the discretion of the regional blocks to have ownership of their resources and then give residue to the federal umbrella for the maintenance of the federation. Now that brought about a lot of animosity. You are not producing anything, but you are having the largest cut of the meat. And that wrangling continued, which culminated into, now before then, upon gaining independence in 1960, we now decided that we will not be toying along the line of the Commonwealth of Nations. Then we now decided to be celebrating December 11th. Upon the overthrow of the first regime, civilian government, January 15, 1966, in order to honor and commemorate the statesmen, 23 high-level politicians were assassinated. In order to remember them, we said, okay, we will be commemorating them along with those Commonwealth soldiers that went for the World War. And then we now adopted January 15th. But immediately after then, so many events happened. Crisis grew up in protest against the military overthrow. It was orchestrated actually to be a national kind of military sanitization, but it ended up to be one-sided. Some people didn't carry out the assignment given to them. It ended up to be one-sided and then continued acrimony up to 29th of July, after which